Traditional Filipino communities. Early Filipino settlements varied in population size. Some were inhabited by thousands of people while others were small, composed only of a few scattered family members. Unit of social organization with broader political, economic, and religious features that the family was the barangay, headed by the native chieftain called Dato Ora. Usually, several barangays were situated near each other to mutually assist in case of war or any emergency. Consolidation of barangays was formed through marriage and blood compact, locally known as Sandugo. This traditional ceremony signifies that the partakers of such rite become blood brothers, presumably because the same blood now flowed in their veins. They drew blood from their arms and mixed it with wine, which they shared and drank at the same time, as viewed by witnesses. Chronicles noted and characterized the social stratification system of pre-colonial Filipino community organization based on wealth, political influence, and social privilege enjoyed. The ranks were as follow: the datu class or the ruling class, the maharlika or the aristocracy, the timagwa pronounced timawa, or the Visayans or the dependent class. Datu Oraha ruled the barangay, since the term barangay came from the word balangay, which means boat, from Juan de Plasencia, a Spanish chronicler in the 16th century. Speculated that the role of the Datu arose from the captain of a boat migrating to the Philippines with his family, relatives, and servants. Miguel de Loarca, in his Relation de las Islas Filipinas, 1582, said that the Datus who lived in the same town obeyed the wittiest among them. Furthermore, Antonio de Morga, in his Socisus de las Islas Filipinas, mentioned that only the best warriors were obeyed. The Boxer Codex, an anonymous late 16th century manuscript, mentioned that only men were qualified for the title. The Datus' power depends upon the faithfulness of his followers. The Dato exercised administrative power in arriving at important decisions. The Dato also exercised legislative powers, calling the Boxer Codex, an anonymous late 16th century manuscript, mentioned that only men were qualified for the title. The Datu's power depends upon the faithfulness of his followers. The Dato exercised administrative powers in arriving at important decisions. The Dato also exercised legislative powers, calling his people all together and securing their consent. The Dato usually had a council of elders to advise him, especially in the enactment of a law. He had a duty to protect his community. The Dato also was given judicial powers, since he could render judgment in any dispute. He should hear the testimony of the claimants before handing down the verdict. His decision could be appealed to an arbiter of the claimant's choice from another community. Control over the disposition of barangays' real property was vested in their native chief. The chieftain received the agricultural produce, personal service, as well as respect from his people. He took his share of the harvest as tribute except from the aristocracy or the Maharlika. Other historians include the family relatives and elders of the Datu as members of aristocracy. The Maharlikas were believed to be the descendants of mixed marriage between a ruling dynasty and the one out of power. The, the Timawa class enjoyed their rights to a portion of the barangay land. Their normal obligation was agricultural labor, but they were also called to catch fish. To accompany expedition or paddle boats, they were also called out of irregular services like supporting feasts and building houses. An alipin was a man indebted to another. His creditor could have been a dato maharlika, timaywa, or another alipin. His reason he was called gintubo. He inherits the debt of his parents. The degree of alipin indebtedness may vary. For example, if alipin and timawa marry, their offspring would be half alipin, where he would only work half of his father's obligation. There were two kinds of alipin, the aliping namamahay and the aliping sa gigilid. The alipin with land rights was called namamahay o householder. He owned a house. He came at his master's call to work on the field and to other services. A man enters the namamahay status either by inheritance from namamahay parents, dropping down from the timawa status, or arising from the sagigilid status. The aliping sagigilid o gilid is the part of the house where the stove is, where members of the master's household who ate from their master's pot. There may be transferred to another creditor at any moment and may be rewarded at their master's pleasure. Slaves purchased from outside the community and captives in battles or raids were included in the sagigilid status. The dependent population, whom the Spanish chronicles called slaves, were released from dependence by paying back debts, by marriage, by purchase, or by voluntary act of masters. The barangay had both oral and written laws. The oral laws were their customs o ugali, which had been handed down from generation to generation. Written law were promulgated by datus with the help of the Council of Elders. However, these laws may be changed by consensus among ruling datus or by any among them powerful enough to do so. Such written laws were announced to the people by a barangay crier known as umalohokan. The unwritten codes of conduct were strictly obeyed. Righteousness was kabanalan, and upright person was described banal. Any wrongdoing would have mean reprehension from the community leaders and, more importantly, from the supernatural beings. When a witness was called to testify against anybody, it was customary to say, May lightning strike me if I am telling a lie. May the heavens of the sun fall upon me if I will tell a lie. That believed that after death, the soul would travel to another world to receive due reward or punishment. The good soul would go to kalwalhatian, state of bliss, according to the Tagalogs, and Ologan to the Visayans. The bad soul would go to a place of doom called Kasamaan by the Tagalog and Solad by the Visayans. Aside from their strong belief for life after death, archaeological sites show that there was a local form of ancestor worship. Religion was animistic or based on the worship of spirit of dead relatives and other spirits such as nature. Deities. Early Filipinos' contact with other Asian brought in the belief system like the Anito concept. To honor ancestor, the Visayans called their ancestor spirit umalagad, from the word alagad or flower. The notion of diwatas or spirit that dwell in nature was also pervasive in the Visayas and Mindanao. The abstract idea of religion was correctly shown in sculptured objects known as licha, pronounced lika, or larawan reverently worshipped by the natives. The Cordillera people carve Anito figures called bulul, signifying as ancestral spirits and granary gods. There are over 1,500 gods in the Ifugao pantheon, by which sacrificial offerings were made. The Matungulan takes care of the welfare of animals, and the Pili looks over the property. The Minahu welfare animals. The Minahu regulates welfare while the Bulul controls rice. The Bulul figures, usually made in pair, is carved by a censor priest carving or by older members of the village. The figures are curved either by standing or sitting, and most often the wood is taken from the Nara tree. The figures are then placed in a granary house or house attic, where they are believed to guard the harvest from pests and thieves. Every harvest time, the bulol is brought out to share the bounty of the harvest and to consume the non-material essence of the sacrificial rice, chickens, pigs, and rice swine, while the people eat the material part. Aside from sculpture, objects, the relationship between ancient spirits and men were expressed in elaborate paintings executed or on the bodies of human beings. Tattooing is believed by some people was done as the thanksgiving offering to the gods, while others, in many instances, had it done to acquire protective powers from spirits, or were applied after a man had shown remarkable courage in battle. Tattoos were also part of the body and ornaments of pre-Hispanic Filipino men and women. These were also regarded as war medals. Other minor gods and idols include Lakambini, the god of the throat, Bibit, who was offered food by the people for good health, Lakambakod, guard of the crops, and Lakapati, who was the god of the fields and had a half-woman and half-man figure. There was also major gods considered by ancient Filipinos. The supreme god of the Tagalogs was Bathala or Aba. He was said to inhabit a faraway realm of eternal space known as Kalwalhatian. For the Bontocs and Kananays of the Central Cordillera, Lumawig was the creator and the preserver of life. Among the Ifugaos, and the highest of all their deities is Kabunyan, who dwells in the fifth region of the universe. Mediums were called upon to communicate with spirits who often disturbed the divination to ascertain the will or of the gods, such as divination usually took place during the rituals practiced by the natives